to a trust that requires trust, belief, action. It requires you to put your faith in the person who will lead you to safety, to peace. A long time ago, Jesus Christ spoke these simple words to his closest friends, and his invitation still stands today. Come, follow me. Follow me, and I will show you how to love others and love yourself. Follow me, and I will show you how to repent and be forgiven and forgive others. Follow me to turn things around, to start over, to navigate the storms of life and the storms of death. Follow me to find purpose, your purpose, God's purpose. He taught us the way. He showed us the way. And when we follow his way, we find a new life.
Hello, there we go. Amen. Okay, so hopefully from my opening video there, we can sort of have an inkling of what direction I might be going in this morning. The video was speaking about following. Our mandate as believers is to follow Christ first and foremost. So today I wanted to, and I've been reading and I've been just, questioning and these questions have been coming on, are we disciples or are we Christian? Are we disciples or are we Christian? Who thinks there's a difference between those two words? Is there a difference between those two words? If you think there is, put your hand up. Okay, about 5 of you. For the other 45 of you, think that there isn't a difference, or there is a difference, or there isn't a difference. There is a difference between the word disciple and Christian. Yes, as Christians we are supposed to be disciples, but sometimes as Christians, we are not disciples. So it becomes an issue of, yes, semantics, but also of who we are. Okay? Is that better, or am I still too low? They can't turn me up there anymore. Hello? Check. 1, 2. I'll talk a bit louder. Okay? So it becomes then an issue of, who am I? So with that said, it is going to sound a little bit basic and of Christianity 101, and talking about discipleship. Okay? Today I want to have a look at the word disciple and what it means to be a disciple, and what it means to disciple someone. Okay? Now, that second phrase, to disciple someone, who sort of gets a little bit worried and scared when people say, you will need to disciple someone? Yeah, there's a little bit of fear there. There's a little bit of trembling that occurs that you, each one of you, have to disciple someone. Or some people. May not necessarily be one person. Okay? And that instills in us a sense of, oh, well, I'm not good enough. I'm not ready. I don't know the Bible well enough. I don't do all these things that I see, Pastor John and Pastor Clara and the others do. But if we break it down, we'll see that the process of being a disciple and discipling is not that complex. I think we make it bigger than what it is because of what we've learned and the picture and the idea that we get about it. But it's not that difficult. Now, part of that video shows what it is to be a disciple. It's basically following somebody. And then being a discipler is being the leader and somebody following you. So that video explained it quite simply for us. Now, academically we know what that means in our minds, but I don't know if we fully have gone into the practical. Check. Okay. This is going to be weird for me because I move my hands a lot. That's going to come off. Okay. So, what was I up to? Okay. So, what it looks like. And like I said before at the beginning, we've fallen into this misconception of how do I say this nicely, of grabbing onto this tag of being called a Christian, and that's safe for us. Well, I'm a Christian, and therefore then that's who I am. And that brings a sense of security. That brings a sense of accomplishment. Well, I'm a Christian. But it doesn't stop there. And I think through time and through teaching and whatnot, I think we kind of fall away from the true meaning of being a Christian. And that's what I sort of want to look at into today. Now, a disciple of Jesus Christ. What does it mean? It means that a disciple is a basically an apprentice. I guess that's the word I could use. An apprentice. Who's been an apprentice in this room? You've done an apprenticeship before, with a plumbing, construction, whatever it may be. I know there's a few that have gone through an apprenticeship process. Now, what's the typical apprenticeship process for, I don't know, a carpenter or a plumber? Anyone know? No? Apprenticeship process, years, how many years it takes to be an apprentice? Where's Chris Gibson? Chris Gibson, how long were you an apprentice for? 4 years as a plumber. 4 years of following somebody. 4 years of learning from somebody. 4 years of going to TAFE and learning theory and the basics of plumbing. 4 years of going onto jobs and digging trenches and doing the dirty work of being an apprentice. Right? Because being an apprentice, you don't get all the glamorous jobs. Right? It's all the little bits that nobody else wants to do, or that the others have earned the right not to do. Right? Because they've been an apprentice too. So they've done that. Now it's the other person's turn to step up so that they can learn the process, so they can be the best plumber that they can be. Carpenter, etc. It means to follow a rabbi. In those days, a disciple followed a rabbi, which a rabbi we know is a teacher. Wherever he went, learning from the rabbi's teachings and being trained to do as the rabbi did. Okay? And that's why I put the terms in today's terms of an apprentice, plumbing, whatever it might be. Another practical way of looking at it is, in our situation here at VCC, and to bring a little bit of frame of reference, physically, who are our rabbis here at VCC? Or we could look as our rabbis. That'd be the pastors, John and Clara. Yes? Okay? Now, and this is where it gets a bit confronting. How many of us have followed where they go and have learned what they teach and have done as, and we do as they have done? To a capacity we all have, little bits. But if we're honest, have we gone to some of the steps that they've gone to in some things in life? And like I said, some of us have followed, some of us have learned, some of us are doing. But maybe we haven't gone as much into as we should have, learned as much as we should have, or done as much as we should do. Now, they're not perfect, okay? And I'm not saying they are, and I'm not perfect. None of us are. But if we are following someone, then we are then to mirror what they do. Okay? Now, our ultimate person to mirror, obviously, is Jesus. Right? That's our aim. That's our main purpose of being here this morning. I hope sitting in your seats, hopefully not thinking that you're going to get a great sort of show and performance, but that you're here because you're trying to mirror what Jesus is trying to teach us. So if we have struggled maybe in doing some of these things and being a disciple in the physical with physical beings around us, how much more has it been difficult to then do it in the spiritual? Have we truly gone and been a disciple of Christ? Because that's a big statement there. If you're a disciple of Christ, and we're going to look at some of that, where we need to be sort of really sure of what we're doing, is what I'm trying to say. Luke 14:25 gives us a description of the cost of discipleship. Who's read that recently? Luke 14:25. I think it's something we should be reading quite often because it gives us a good indicator of what it will cost for me to be a disciple, what it will cost for you to be a disciple. That's one of those scriptures you have on speed dial, right? To always sort of remind yourself. Now it reads, a large crowd was following Jesus. He turned around and said to them, if you want to be my disciple, you must, by comparison, hate everyone else. Okay? Your father, your mother, your wife, your children, your brothers, your sisters, yes, even your own life. If you're going to be my disciple, you need to hate all these. Now, obviously the word hate is not being used in the context of hate, but it's being used in the context of giving up. Not wanting to hold on to anything that they mean to you. You still love them, you still respect them, you still honor them, but if it came to a crossroad where it was your life for Christ and your family, which one would you choose? And that's what he's saying there, right? The language shows us a complete selling out to Jesus. So what language is using there is basically you need to sell yourself out to me. To follow me is to follow me only. To follow me is not to follow me and your job. To follow me is not to follow me and your family, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband, your wife, your children, etc. Like I said, you still love, you still all the things that you do, but at that crossroad, what's more important to you? There must be a priority of relationship. What is your priority relationship right now? What is your priority relationship right now? Think about it. Is it Jesus? Now, why is this crucial? And I said it before. It's crucial given the rejection, persecution that lies ahead of us. Now, if I'm a Christian, if I'm Christ-like, did Christ suffer persecution, rejection, etc.? Yeah. So, if I'm a true disciple, I need to, at some point down the road, be prepared to encounter some of that. Because I'm going to stand up for what the Word says. And I'm going to stand up to my belief system. And I'm going to not twist my ways to fit other people's ways. I'm going to stand up to what is true. I'm going to stand up for what is right. Now, when you do that out there, you're going to get persecuted. Right? Are you prepared for that? Are we ready for that? Have you done some of that? Have you encountered some of that? We may have. To little bits. You know, some of what I'm going at school, I think I've said before, it's a form of persecution. But it's nothing compared to those people in Africa getting killed or wherever else where churches are getting burnt and their lives are getting, tortured and whatever else. So my persecution in the scope of things is nothing. And maybe I'm not then doing what I'm supposed to be doing as a true disciple. Maybe I'm not being outward enough with my belief to be persecuted more. Not that I want to be persecuted, but come on, that's what the whole thing is about. We have to count a cost. So basically, a disciple, is a follower. What are we following? Who are we following? Okay? But only if we take the term follower literally. Now those men, when Jesus called them, they took it literally. Right? They dropped their nets and they took off after him, not knowing what was ahead, not knowing what was going to happen, not knowing that one day they would lose their lives because of following him, because they sold themselves out to him. They had no idea they were going to be stoned. They had no idea they were going to be crucified upside down. They had no idea they were going to be burnt. They didn't know that. But yet, they dropped their nets and followed. Right? So somewhere in there they understood this concept of there's something special about this guy to make me want to drop everything I'm doing, to make me want to drop my livelihood and everything I know to follow this guy, not knowing what was coming ahead. There was something there. Do we have that same understanding of who Jesus is? I don't know. The questions we need to ask. See, it's impossible to be a disciple or a follower of someone and not end up like that person. It's impossible. If I am a true disciple, right? If I am a true apprentice of a great plumber, I'm going to be just like that great plumber. Because I'm going to be watching him closely. I'm going to watch all the little tricks he does. I'm going to watch all the shortcuts he does. I'm going to see everything that he does so that I can too then make the money that he does. Right? Well, am I following Christ as I should? Am I mirroring right now Christ-like attitude, behavior, love, acceptance, all those things? They're the questions that we need to ask. Jesus said, a disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone, when he is fully trained, will be like his teacher. Luke 6:40 reads that. Okay? So when we're starting out, we can't be over and above them. But when we're fully done and gone through our training, we then, at that point, are like our teacher. And depending on how long we've been in this walk, however slow, however quick, there should be some evidence of us being like our teacher. That's just me and my logical mind, right? I'm not judging anyone. This is just questions. I think like this a lot, right? And I start thinking, well, if this is the way it is, then why don't we see that, right? What is it? What's wrong? And that's the whole point of being a disciple of Jesus. We imitate him, carry on his ministry, and become like him in the process. I mean, that's the package. Yet, somehow, and I'm not just talking about VCC, have come to believe that a person can be a Christian without being Christ-like. This is my opening statement. Can we be a Christian and not a disciple? Yeah, we can. A follower? Can we be a Christian without following? How does that make sense? So we have thousands of people calling themselves Christian, not just, in our settings, but throughout the world, millions of people who call themselves Christian. But to what definition? To what definition of that word? And this is, I think, something that we need to really start looking at closer for our lives, for us as individuals. See, many people in the church as a whole decide to take on the name of Christ. So we take on the name of Christ, and Pastor John's taught before. We take on that family name. Yeah. My children, 4 of them, take on Casanova. Okay, that's who they are. Now, they're not really Casanovas, but I hope not anyway. So I've got 3 boys. But there is a connotation of that name that people, Casanova, that's a great name. Really? Were you a Casanova? I've heard that so many times throughout the years, right? So there's an expectation of that name, right? There is. If your name means something, there is an expectation that, do you live that way? Are you a Casanova? Are you a Christian? Really? Are you a follower of Christ? You're acting like him right now? And your attitude is like him right now? Right? So again, these are the things I think about, and I'm just happen to be up front and sharing my thoughts. Okay? So, to put it into those days' context, it'd be like Jesus calling those guys on the fishing boat saying, hey, would you guys mind identifying yourselves with me in some way, whatever way? Don't worry, okay? Don't stress. I don't actually care if you follow or do anything or change your lifestyle for me, right? I'm just looking for people who are willing to say that they believe in me and call themselves Christians, so I can gather a big group and just go around and just get a lot of people. Do you think we would have what we have today if that was the case? We wouldn't. We wouldn't have the change that happened all those years ago, and the transformation of people, and the transformation of belief and all that. Now, who really believes that that's our mandate? Carrying the name Christian, to just come to church, sit there, listen, go out, spend another 6 days doing whatever you do, and so on for the rest of your life. Is that really what you've signed up for, to be a Christian is about? I don't know. I can't judge you. You know yourselves. But that's the question that we need to ask ourselves. Jaden, do you have that video?
Disciple is a Christian, and a Christian is a disciple. But if I was to share with you just a few practical pointers on what a disciple is, we know that the word disciple means a learner, but it's not a passive learner. It's an active learner. It's a learner who lives to learn and learns to live. And together, this makes this disciple first and foremost a follower of Jesus. A disciple is a follower. You know, I would encourage us as Christians to change the language. When we go around and we ask people, are you a Christian? Many people will say, oh, yes. But try this. Are you a follower of Jesus Christ? That's a little more weighty and substantial, isn't it? It asks, are they a verb? Are they a follower? Are they really going after Jesus Christ? So a Christian or a disciple, is a follower. Secondly, he is a person or she is a person that's an example. We are to exemplify what we expect. We're to model what we mandate. We're to show what we share in our lives. And then finally, I think a disciple, biblically speaking, is a reproducer. It's multiplication ministry. As a disciple, we're also a disciple maker. We look to make disciples. I've got this group of boys that I'm discipling. It's my son and some of his friends. And I spent some time with them, talking to them, and I was challenging them. I said, you don't have to wait till you become adults to start making disciples. You can start reproducing ministry right now. You can start multiplication ministry right now. And I challenge these kids who are 12 and 13. I want you to go and find maybe somebody in your neighborhood or school over the next week and start investing in them. Share the things that I share with you in our discipleship meetings with them. And help that person to grow more like Jesus. And each of those kids said they knew somebody, and I challenged them to go and do that. Well, in your own life, how can you better follow Jesus? How can you better be an example? And then third, who can you begin to invest in right now where you're not only a disciple, but you are a disciple maker? Because a disciple is a follower of Christ. That's what a Christian is.
So hopefully he said it a bit more clearer than what I've been trying to say. But in essence, that's the message that I'm trying to get through. Now, being a disciple, being a follower. Now, from that discipling process, which we then, doing as our teacher is doing, then Jesus starts to send people out. He says now there's the Great Commission of the church basically happens, right? And basically Jesus' command is to go and make disciples of all the nations. Now this is where you come in. This is where now it's on us, right? It's been on us to copy and be like Jesus, but now it's on us to now go and do what Jesus can't, right? Physically, right? Which is to go out and touch those and speak to those and show those around us what it is like and what it should be like to be a Christian, to be Christ-like, to be a disciple. And many of us read the words in the Great Commission and think, oh, well, that's just for that pastor that's about to go on missions, or that's for that missionary who, needs to go on their missions trip. And that's for, so-and-so who one day will be a missionary. But often we don't think about that. That could be just for you. It could be for us. Because we live in a mission field, don't we? Every day you go to work. Who works with only Christians? Anyone work with only Christians? And even then, that doesn't mean anything. So no one. So we are all in a mission field every day when we go to our jobs. Who goes to school with just Christians? No one. So again, that is your mission field. That is your place to go out and make disciples. But that's scary, isn't it? Yeah? It's scary. It's very scary. Because then in that process of going to attempt to do that is when you might encounter some persecution. It's where you may encounter some of that stuff that I should have taken count for before I decided to go out and do this. I should have thought, I'm gonna encounter some of this. Right? But the disciples went out. They went out 2 by 2s or in bigger numbers, making disciples, teaching them to obey everything that Jesus had commanded and baptizing them. Okay? So there was a whole package deal. Some of them even moved to different areas. Okay? So our modern sort of day missionaries, they would go out, okay, I'm going to move. I've reached everyone I can reach here, so I'm going to move. And I'm going to go and affect another group of people. Now, who wants to move to go and disciple people? Who's comfortable in their home? Oh, you're all lying to me. So no one's comfortable in their home here. Who's comfortable in their home? Yeah, I think we all are. Right? So we're not going to sell up and go to Ipswich because, there's no Christians up there. Whatever. So no, that's not the first thing that comes into our heads, does it? No. But we forget that we are on a mission field every day. See, what these disciples did is they took Jesus' word seriously. And they took it literally, which is more important. They literally took the words, go out and make disciples. They literally went out. They literally did whatever they did, whatever they needed to do to go and preach the gospel and show people what Christ had done in them, more importantly. Because you can say words and you can, say things to people. You can be quite knowledgeable in what the scriptures say and you can recite Bible verses all you want. But if a person doesn't see you live that, they're going to listen to you. Right? Yeah? So if I get a plumber who tells me they have all these degrees about plumbing, right? But he doesn't know how to dig a hole, he's not a very good plumber. Okay? So, if I know all the things I need to about God, the Word, everything's in there, but I'm not showing that to people, then I'm a closet Christian. I'm out. Our churches today, there's very little of that to go and make disciples. I know at VCC we do. For years we've been trying to, get disciples and to go out and make disciples. But there's something there that's holding us back, even here at VCC, from making disciples. And it could be fear, and it could be, that sense of feeling inadequate, or feeling like I don't know enough, or feeling like what do I have to give, or and all those things that, can come at us and the enemy uses and whatnot. But at some point, we're going to have to take a stance. And we're going to have to say, you know what? I'm here to just do what Jesus did. Would Jesus have encountered fear when in front of a group of Pharisees and whatnot holding rocks as they were about to stone a young woman? Would he have encountered a little bit of fear? Okay, I'm going to do this. They could turn on me. They could start throwing these things at me. But, you know, he was human after all, wasn't he? So there would have been a sense of fear. You don't hear much about these. But again, my processes is he's human. He's going into a hostile situation. There would be a sense of life preservation. Yeah? So you have to know that it's okay. Yes, there might be some persecution. But if we're not stepping up because of that, then what are we doing? So we really need to believe that Jesus told his early followers to make disciples. Do you think Christ would want that different for the 21st century church? Are the requirements changed? Is he expecting something different from us because we have technology? We can do discipling in a different way, maybe? No, I think the techniques and what Jesus expects from us is the same as he did back then. Regardless of the technology, regardless of the advancements that we have, nothing's going to change someone like you building a relationship, them seeing you as a Christian, how it should be, you following Christ. Nothing will change a person more than that. Regardless of your skill, vocabulary skill, etc., etc., etc. People will change when they see you being who you say you are. Now, taking those steps can be scary, as I've said. Romans 10:14 and 15 reads, "But how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? And how can they believe in him if they have never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them? And how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? That is why the scriptures say, how beautiful are the feet of messengers who bring good news." So it's a process. Okay, Romans 10:14 and 15. People are not going to hear if no one goes out to tell them. People in your workplace are not going to know if you don't reveal yourself. Yeah, it's not a guessing game. Oh, I'll just do all my work and that should change people. I'll get there on time and they'll see that I'm a Christian. Right? No, we're going to have to step out a little bit more. We're going to have to let ourselves go a little bit more. I'll share my lunch. That shows Christianity. No, okay? It's going to be taking you step out. Yes, all those little things do help, okay? But at some point, people around you are going to have to hear and see and be invited to and, see your world. Because we're comfortable in our world. This is comfortable here, right? On a Sunday, on a Wednesday, whenever, it's comfortable. We know what to expect. We know what's coming. We know what's going to be, comfortable. Becomes a little bit more uncomfortable when we're being challenged to then bring somebody else into this. Yeah? It's like a teenage kid embarrassed of your home, of their home. They don't want to bring their friends around. Yeah, because it's uncomfortable. Or embarrassed of the family. And it's just a teenage phase. But it's like that. We have to eventually get out of that and say, this is who I am. I'm proud of who I am. This is what Christ wants me to do. I am, after all, a disciple. I am, after all, a follower. I am, after all, doing what I need to do, not because of me, not because I want numbers and disciples, but because these people need God. That's really the ultimate goal. We all have someone in our lives that need God. At work, at home, family, etc. And we know the basics. We know about building relationship. We know that this person, may never get a chance, or may not again get a chance of hearing the gospel unless it's through us. So we have to take those steps in order for that to occur. God has placed you where you are for a reason. We need to keep that in mind. Wherever you're at, wherever you're doing, it's for a reason. Okay? It's not by accident. The Great Commission calls for everybody, for every person or every type of person to be reached. It doesn't matter what background, it doesn't matter, where they're from, etc., etc. We cannot be biased in our, reaching out and showing people who Christ is. Everybody needs to see what Christ was like. One thing, though, is don't think that you're alone. The disciples were sent 2 by 2s or more. It doesn't mean that you have to feel like you have to go out and do these things on your own. We have connect groups which are about to start up. We have different men's groups and women's groups and all kinds of youth group and all that sort of stuff that's there to assist you, to help you, to get those people, to get your friends, to get your family to come and experience more of what being Christ-like is. And out of that, then discipling begins. Out of that, then you become that person who then, is the teacher and the one that they will hopefully replicate. But remember, for that, you need to make sure you're following right. Because then we don't want to reproduce a bad plumber. Right? I don't want a plumber out there that's going to charge me $800 to change a tap and be broken in 2 weeks. Amen? Discipleship is a serious business, and it's serious to Jesus. There is a cost, and to be a disciple and to complete that task, we have to count the cost. We have to make sure that we come to terms with God in that process, but that means that we must humbly come to Him in those terms. What we are taught, what we have been shown, etc. Successful discipleship puts God first. And we cannot forget that. If we're going to succeed in this, God must be first in our lives. Now, up to this point in your life, would you call yourself a follower of Christ? A disciple? Or would you call yourself a Christian? You don't have to answer. Now, that question, if that question challenges us, challenges you, in that maybe we haven't been maybe a true follower in the sense of what we've sort of heard and what we've seen and what we've sort of experienced of Christ, then the challenge this morning, I know, is for us to step out and become more of a disciple to Christ. I think this whole process that I've had is to be able to then go through it and challenge people to step out. And if you have not, if it's been difficult, you've struggled, whatever it may be, to be that disciple, to be that follower, to be that learner, to be that everything that in packages that package, then I think it's a time for us to reconsider, maybe have a good look at what we've what we've done, what we're doing, and maybe consider doing it a little bit different. I don't know. Only you know. The other thing to keep in mind is that those first men that were called out from the boats, were they called Christians? What were they called? They were disciples. The term Christianity has been added on later. Anyone who followed Christ was a disciple, was a follower, was a learner, was a doer. Christianity's come on later as a sort of cover title to make it, who knows who changed it? But disciple should be the true form of who we are. Yes, people understand, oh, you're a Christian, Christianity, okay. But I'm also, more importantly, a disciple. Because I follow, I do, etc., what God has called me to do. And maybe we need to call ourselves disciples more often. It'll help us identify with what we need to do and what challenge lays before us. And the last thought that I had was growth in the church then came through the disciples making disciples. That's how growth came into the church. It didn't come at a revival tent meeting. We can have those anytime. Growth didn't happen because of those things. Growth came because of disciples making disciples. It was those people teaching others how to be Christ-like that built the church up. It wasn't the message. It wasn't the music. It wasn't anything else. The only way I think we're going to grow the church is through making disciples. Is for us to step out and bring those people in that are around us and teaching them how to be Christ-like. Reaching out. Again, we need to be following that ourselves. Amen? And that's all I have to say about that. So this morning, that question challenged you. And I want you to reflect. This is a time of reflection. No one's here judging you. No one's here condemning you. But I think it's good for us to reflect on how we've lived our life up to this point. Maybe some of us have built and created and have brought people to Christ and we've discipled them and we've done all that, but maybe 10, 15, I don't know. Is that enough? Is there a number? Or is it something we should be doing continually? I don't have the answer for that. I personally think it would be something that I would continually be doing throughout my life to keep that process, to keep that happening. So if that's you, if that's us, I want us to think this morning and maybe have an opportunity to come to God and say, you know what? I want to do this disciple thing a little bit different. I want to do this discipling thing a little bit different. I want to step out. A lot of you in this room have followed, have learned, have done all those things. The last step that's missing, I think, is then teaching others to do that. And I think that's the challenge for us today, to step out and bring some of those people around us to Christ through you. Not through Pastor John and Clara, not through the leaders, not through those who, have the charisma and the ones that, are, friendly and the ones that talk to people and know how to talk to people. No, it's through you. And it's a big challenge for some of us. I include myself in that because I'm typically not, that sort of outgoing to begin with.
at all. But it is a challenge. Okay? So I understand some of your fears, hesitations, etc. But keep in mind, unless we begin to do this, what you see here is what we will see in 5-10 years. And that's not me, whatever you call it. But if we don't make some changes, each one of us individually, how are we going to bring people to Christ? How are people going to come to Christ? Amen? Amen. Can I get you to stand up, please? Give your legs a rest.